So why does almost nobody teach birch bark tinder in gear stores? Why did this basic woodsman skill disappear from modern camping talk? The answer sits inside the survival tinder product aisle right now. Fire starter cubes, waxed jute ropes, Esbit tabs, magnesium blocks. One shelf in any outdoor store holds 40 different fire products, all of them marked up 400% from raw material cost. All of them sold to men who drive past thousands of birch trees daily, men who camp on land covered in free tinder for 300 miles, men who never learned to read a birch trunk. Nobody taught them. You cannot sell a man a fire cube if he reads bark on every tree. You cannot sell a man plastic tinder if he carries a pocket knife. You cannot sell a ferro rod upgrade if a single match lights the bark. The entire fire gear market depends on one thing only to survive here. It depends on you believing fire must come from a product box. A man who strips birch bark is a man who stops buying fire forever. So the magazines stopped covering it. The outdoor shows dropped it. The gear ads filled the space with plastic fire starters instead. A whole generation grew up thinking survival fire comes from a brand. They never learned the one tree every real woodsman could find blind. You cannot patent a paper birch. You cannot copyright its outer bark. You cannot lock away betulin oil behind a paywall or subscription fee. But you can bury the skill in silence. You can let it fade quietly. You can replace real woodscraft with a product on every store shelf. That is exactly what the gear industry did over the last 40 years. The birch bark tinder skill did not die. It just stopped being sold. So it got replaced. Ignored. Buried under piles of plastic fire cubes. Here is what to do this season to bring the birch bark skill back. Learn to spot a paper birch on sight from across a wooded trail. Paper birch has smooth white bark that peels in thin paper sheets. The bark has dark horizontal marks called lenticels running across it. Yellow birch and grey birch work too, but paper birch is the strongest. Never cut around the whole trunk. That kills the tree within a year. Only peel loose outer layers that are already lifting away from bark. A dead fallen birch is the best source. Strip the whole trunk clean. Carry a small fixed blade knife and a folded cloth pouch in your coat. Slice thin strips about 2 fingers wide and the length of your palm. Roll them gently between your fingers to shred the edges into fibers. The shredded edges catch a spark or a match flame almost instantly. Store the strips flat in the cloth pouch next to your body for warmth. Your body heat keeps the strips bone dry even in heavy rainstorms. When you need fire, pull one strip and make a small feather fan. Fluff one edge into thin curls using the back of your knife blade. Strike a spark or touch a match flame to the fluffed curled edge. The flame will take hold in under 3 seconds every single time. You will see the oil catch first. A bright orange curl of flame. The flame travels across the whole strip within 5 full seconds. Then the whole strip burns steady for over 2 full minutes. That is more than enough time to build a complete fire from scratch. Feed dry pencil-sized twigs into the flame as it grows stronger. Build up to wrist-thick wood and the fire is set for the night. Never carry one single strip. Always carry at least 5 strips. One wet day can ruin a careless man. 5 strips means 5 chances. This works in rain. This works in snow. This works below 0 cold. Trappers proved it every winter for 200 years in the north. The gear industry has been trying to make you forget it ever since. I have to be honest about one real limit in this whole method here. Paper birch does not grow in every forest across this country today. In the deep south you will find less birch and more southern pine. Pine holds its own fatwood tinder inside old pine stumps and knots. From Pennsylvania north and west across half the continent it grows. Anywhere you see white birch trunks shining in the woods, you win. In those regions, birch bark beats every product on the fire aisle. It beats them on price. It beats them on ignition and in the rain. It beats them because it has been winning quietly for 2 centuries. The old trappers proved it. The gear industry just hides the proof. This knowledge did not die. It waited on the trunk of every tree. It waited through 40 years of shelves loaded with fire cubes. It waited through every ad promising real survival fire in a box. The fire was always on the tree. The industry just covered the trees. Every white birch trunk in the woods is a fire waiting for a hand. Every loose curl of bark is a free flame no store can ever match. Every man who walks past those trees walks past free winter fire. If this video made a real difference for you, subscribe and share it. Share it with the man who buys fire cubes for every weekend camp. Every share preserves what modern outdoor culture tried hard to bury. The full buried vault link sits right at the top of the description. The next vault opens soon. What is inside is heavier than this one. The forgotten birch bark will light more winter fires than any box. Walk the birch stand this season. Read the trunks. Trust the craft. The fire is already on the tree, waiting for the man who knows how. Most men think fire has to come from a store shelf in a box. Most men never learned about the tree that carries fire in its skin. A tree you can strip in seconds with just your bare hands today. A tree that lights in pouring rain when nothing else will burn down. The outdoor gear industry buried it behind $30 fire cubes, behind plastic fire starter blocks, and branded survival tinder tubes. They replaced a free tree with a product they could print a price on. The tree is the paper birch. The answer has always been its bark. One curled strip of birch bark burns hotter than a magnesium shaving. It burns wet, it burns in snow, it burns when every match is dead. This is the story of the forgotten tinder the gear industry replaced. Welcome to this channel, Hidden Timber Rhett speaking to you now. If you still value real backwoods craft over plastic gear, subscribe. This is where buried Northwoods knowledge comes back to life again. Let me take you back to the deep winter of the trapper days. The cold boreal forests north of the Great Lakes in this country. A trapper named Bear ran a trap line for furs through the season. He worked through temperatures that stayed far below zero for weeks. His matches froze. His steel got wet. His hands barely moved in cold. But he never once failed to start a fire on the entire trap line. Because Bear carried a small leather pouch against his own chest. The warmth of his body kept the pouch dry even in the worst storms. Inside that pouch sat curled rolls of dry paper birch bark shavings. He pulled one strip, one spark, one breath, and the fire took hold. Every night he built a fire this way, every single morning too. The native people taught this skill to the old fur traders long ago. The fur traders taught it to the northern trappers and homesteaders. The homesteaders taught it to their sons through the hard old years. By the trapper age, every backwoods boy knew how birch bark burned. A kid with a hatchet and a birch tree could start a fire in a storm. A trapper 100 miles from any road could warm a cold cabin. A hunter caught in freezing rain could dry his socks before dawn. A lost man on the trail could survive a single cold winter night. A man alone in the woods had fire as long as birch grew nearby. This was not survival gear. This was just how woodsmen lived. Nobody marketed it. Nobody sold it. Nobody wrote a book on it. It was passed from father to son and trapper to trapper quietly. Then the gear industry realized they could sell fire in a plastic bag. This video is only scratching the surface of the real buried craft. I collected what the gear industry buried under their shelf tags. All of it lives inside the complete forbidden hunter's vault now. Deadwood fire skills that light in rain, wind, snow, and cold. Sub-zero furnace tricks built from simple field logic and a hatchet. Invisible camp setups that keep your footprint off the hunting ground. Old meat storage methods still used by the old-timers in the hills. Forgotten deer funnel logic that changes how you read the woods. 8 powerful modules in one place, no fluff, no fantasy gear talk. The link sits right at the top of the video description down below. But stay here with me. The real woodscraft is just barely starting. Here is the science that makes the gear industry silence obvious. Paper birch bark contains a natural oil built right into the paper. That oil is a waxy waterproof resin locked into the paper layers. Some call it a tree oil. The old woodsman called it a fire oil. That means water simply rolls off a sheet of birch bark on contact. The oil also lowers the flame point of the paper layers inside too. A strip of dry birch bark catches flame from a simple match contact. Paper catches flame at one heat level, dry pine needles at a higher. Soaked birch bark still catches flame even when the paper is wet. Soaked pine needles will not catch flame at any spark you can make. The National Forest Service documented this in flame point studies. An old research paper measured the oil content hidden in the bark. They found a huge share of flammable oil by weight in the outer bark. A flammable oil built directly into the tree skin by nature itself. A single strip of birch bark burns for over 2 full minutes straight. 2 full minutes of open flame from a piece of bark you pulled free. A $30 box of fire starter cubes burns 3 minutes each. Birch bark is free. Birch bark grows across most of the north. A pack of commercial fire starter costs more than a decent hand axe. A single old birch drops enough loose bark to fuel 100 fires. That is 100 fires the gear industry will never sell you once. 100 meals cooked, 100 cold mornings warmed, for nothing. The math alone destroys every survival tinder claim ever printed. Yet the paper birch still grows quietly on ridges across the north. If you made it this far, you know more about fire than most men do. More than most people who carry $10 fire cubes in their kit. More than campers who buy plastic fire bricks at the checkout line. Subscribe and share this with someone who values real firecraft. Share with the man who walks past birch trees and never looks twice. Remember, the full buried vault link sits in the description below. Share it with the man who thinks fire has to come from a store shelf. Now stay with me. The next part is the part the industry really hates.